please understand, we do our best to explain as we're going. Sometimes we have to learn to crawl before we walk. And sometimes it takes more than one course to teach a subject. But I'm touching on philosophical psychology and I'm touching on ethics here, both of which I've taught in the last 2 or 3 years to classes like yours. So we do our best. Are we ready to get started? Are you rolling, are you? Now, on page 51, you see that we've shown that the good is first in intention. We're always inclined towards the good, something known as a good. But we may not see it as a good. I was explaining to one of you tonight how we can choose a good according to what we think is good. We may be mistaken. We may make a misjudgment. But let's say somebody like a person who is offered a car or a violin. Well, a violin would cost less than the car, most likely, but that person might value the violin more than the car. So we incline to things as we know them. We may be wrong, but at least it's as we know them. So that's the way it is. Is one thing better than another? Yes. Absolutely it might be, but relative to somebody it may not be. Now, a glass of water, I won't want that, but if you're lost on an island in the South Pacific, some of the islands I've been on, for instance, you might say, I'd give anything for a glass of water if there was no other human there. Anything for a glass of water. Offer a man in the desert, gold or water. Well, for him, water is much more important than the gold. So very often, it's as we judge them. As we've discussed in ethics, Bob in the back seat of a car, he makes a judgment. His mind is now crowded with passion. And he makes a judgment to seduce this girl. He sees that as if it's the absolute end for which any person could desire at that moment, or which any person could desire. And he makes a misjudgment when the passion is worn off. But at that moment he thinks it's the only thing. So sometimes we are clouded by passion. Human reason is very easily led off by passion. St. Thomas wrote a beautiful article on that. Before I forget, by the way, remember I've issued, how many chapters? Forgotten now.
Beautiful was the last thing you said.
Last thing, was it? Yes. Thank you. Well, it's chapter 8, if I remember correctly. But if there's anything I've set out that you haven't got and you want to get, please let me know. Sometimes people ask me to send things and then when I get home I forget them. I'm very tired and I leave here. And sometimes a name pops up. What did I promise to do for that person? I've forgotten. By the way, I must get you to fill in a card for me, if you will, after. So, anyway, like the coffee here, as on page 51. The cup of coffee is in the intention of Bob. It's the first thing in his mind, but it's the last thing when he starts to get acting. It's the last in execution, in carrying out his desire. That's pretty clear. So remember, good and being are convertible terms. If you're talking about a being, you're talking about something good. It might have evil attached to it. We'll come to that in a minute. But nevertheless, there is some goodness there. Goodness is a positive thing. Evil's a negative thing. There can't be a purely negative. It can't be purely evil. That means it's a pure nothing. So we all strive for good. And implicit in our activity in society is the striving towards the common good. Now, somebody, manager of Kmart, is not thinking, we're going to operate staff for the common good. No, he just goes about doing his job. As long as it's not in conflict with the common good, then it's all right. He should carry on. Of course, whether some of these stores are or are not in conflict, that's another story. We'll talk about that. I think I sent out to you, didn't I, the two faces of capitalism. Did I send it out to the class? No, I may not have.
I don't think so.
I should probably send it out to you. So we as limited beings have to seek limited goods which exist around us. And this is the basis of freedom. Bob wants to go to Toronto. He's maybe free to have a holiday. Oh, going to Toronto's nice. Fifi's there. I go to Honolulu. There's where Lulu is. Oh, that's right. Fifi's in Fiji, isn't she? Honolulu has Lulu. And my sweetie's in Tahiti. Who's in Sydney? Never you mind. So, I always told my students when I'm leaving for Australia, those cities, I'll see my sweetie in Tahiti, and etc. Actually, when I was in Tahiti, I wasn't impressed. We didn't even speak the same French. So we're limited by limited goods all around us. I may want to go to, say, to Toronto, New York, or LA. I've got to make up my mind. What's this place? Oh, LA's got the most beautiful smog in the world. So I might want to go there. I remember coming in on a plane over the Pacific one time, and a woman sitting next to me said, "Oh, it must be a big fire down there." I said, "No, that's the purest smog in the world." And the three smoggiest cities at the time were Tokyo, LA, and I'm ashamed to say Sydney, Australia. And the reason, all had the same, a seaport town and a range of mountains behind them. The wind couldn't blow the smog away. Do you remember that, Professor?
Yes, I also noted that there was a slum down near the waterfront.
Around the waterfront.
Complicated the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in, these three cities are all very much the same. Well, anyway, the question is, we have to decide, because they've got limited goods. Toronto, yes, my good friend Dr. John Shea's there. He and Janet, wonderful friends. But if I might, what about New York City? I could go to see such and such there. Because nothing is infinitely good, nothing is perfectly good, they're all limited goods, I got a choice. Nothing imposes itself on me, put it that way. Then I decide, all right, I'll go to Toronto. Now, or maybe my boss said, go to Toronto, if I had a boss, go to Toronto. So that means I don't have a choice. But I got a choice of getting there. It may be walking, bicycle, bus, train, plane.
Or boat.
But,
Or boat.
yeah. Or maybe I could sit in the wheelbarrow and make Fifi here push me. So, but you see, there again, each mode of getting there gets certain limitation. Going up on the train or going in the plane, it's fun. You can stick your foot out and trip the hostess over when she's carrying a tray of drinks. You see, you can do that. Have fun. Walking's very good exercise, but there's a limitation of time. Now the choice is limited, and finally it might get down to one. But each has its goods and each has its limitations. That is why the will is free. On the basis of free will is this. One, we're rational beings and we can make a judgment. This good is limited. Two, on the objective side, those things are all limited in their goodness. Only unlimited good can satisfy man, and this is the cause of happiness. Even if you don't possess it, at least you know about it, that it's possible to get it. That was the ancient world. The Greeks and the Romans knew that there was a God, but thought he's so far above us and so distant from us, he wasn't concerned about things like that. What was that English physicist, wrote a book. Can't think of his name. I have the book somewhere. He said, what an absurd doctrine these Christians have. They talk about a God and a little thing, trivial little thing like man, living in the world, and to think a God would be concerned about him. He had his values all mixed up. One person here sitting in front of me is worth more than the whole universe. More than the whole universe. Professor Moran in Ottawa looked out of his window one day, and there's a man's body lying in long grass. There was a sort of the faculty was built around something like a horseshoe. And then this long grass with a couple of trees, fruit trees, was a man's body. He was drunk, we found out later. So he rang the security services, and everybody's rushing around. Will we notify the police? Poor fellow says, leave me alone. I'm all right, I'm having a sleep, he says. So the will has its natural appetite for unlimited good, but it has a drawn out appetite by our understanding for limited goods around us. And it knows the intellect, the will is not a power of knowing, it's a power of inclination. The intellect knows that it's limited to this. This is only limitation. I've got a bicycle, says the boy. I wish I had a car. It knows that each is unlimited. His dad gives him a car. He says, I can enjoy my college life better, Dad, if I had a car. But he's not satisfied. He wants gas in it next. Then he's not satisfied. He wants to go somewhere. Then he's not satisfied. He wants to take Fifi with him. Then he's not satisfied. He drives down to the lake. He says to Fifi, you want to sit in the back? She says, no, I want to stay here in the front with you. I was assured by somebody who was present in the court. Oh, by the way, then he said, do you want to go a bit further? She said, yes. He drove straight in the lake. We had to pull him out. But this happened in the court in Lewiston. This happened. One of my colleagues was present. A man giving witness, I'm sorry, no, he was a lawyer. He was prosecuting or something. Or no, lawyer for the defense, that was it. He said, Your Honour, you can't make loves on the back seat of a car. I know, because I've tried. Fancy a man having the audacity to say that in court. My colleague was shocked. Yeah. Saying that in court, of all the places. So, my friends, happiness is the satisfaction of every desire and the elimination of all evil. One Danish woman, the mother of one of my good friends in Sydney, said, we Danes have an idea of heaven. It's a great banquet. And she said, this idea of a God would be very boring to us, your idea of a God. Well, I don't know whether she's ever tried to be at a banquet and keep eating, but the Romans had to vomit in order to continue eating. They tickled the back of the throat or drank ipecacuanha wine and vomited, went to the vomitorium, so they could continue enjoying the pleasures of eating. It's just like contraception, isn't it? Or what was it Bernard Shaw called contraception mutual masturbation. Sorry, I got tongue-tied for a second. Mutual masturbation. So, happiness is the satisfaction of every desire and elimination of all evil. Now, if you cannot find satisfaction in a being that's unlimited and has every possible good for eternity, then there's something wrong with a person. Well, it's not wrong with a person. It's a wrong idea about happiness. So, my friends, having said all that, we'll finish up on the good, and now we'll start on the treatise which automatically springs into position, evil, which is opposed to good. Remember, we spoke about the one, and we spoke about what's opposed to it, the many. We spoke about the good, now we're going to speak about evil. So now, evil is not nothing. It's a something. If you try to convince a person with a broken leg that that's a good thing to have, or it's not an evil thing, and I've had students say, what's an evil? They say this, it's when you do something to somebody. But what about when the bridge collapsed here many, many decades ago? That was an evil, terrible thing. And I know people have had broken legs. They wouldn't call that a lot of fun. They'd say that's a real evil. It's a real something, just as potency is a real something. It's not simply nothing. It is a privation, something which has being and goodness, but yet something wrong. We've got to distinguish between a privation and a negation. Negation is the lack of a good. That's a negation. Lack of a good. That's a negation. For instance, a little dog doesn't have intellect. That's a negation. Joe doesn't understand anything about physics. That's a negation. But a privation is lack of a due good. A good that ought to be there. That word due has to be carefully understood. When I was in the south of France, I loved talking to schoolboys, a little chatting whenever I got a chance. Kids are so obvious and so straight out. They wouldn't care. They'd laugh at you if you made a mistake in the French language, for instance. And they'd correct you, and you learn that way. They say you can't learn from adults for that reason. So they'd say, whoops, I think I better print that. Now the verb devoir means to owe or to ought. What you ought to do. And they put an S on it, and that's their name for homework. Mes devoirs, my duties, what I ought to do. Nous avons trop devoirs, says a student to me. We have too much homework. The past participle is due. Past participle means due. What I ought to have done, or what I ought, it's like run, he ran. Or no, it's more than that actually. Jump, jumped in English. Well, this is to ought, this is oughted. That's where that word comes from. And the feminine is made like that. So, but Americans pronounce this as do, my do-goods, and that's how students write it in an exam, I found. What my dues are. I belong to this journal and I pay my dues once a year. DOS, they'd write. Well, that's the lack of something you ought to be there. That's what an evil is. Something that ought to be there. So, if the dog is dumb about, say, arithmetic, we don't blame the dog for that. But if Jenna's dumb about arithmetic, we blame her for that, don't we? Blame her teachers. Yes, there's something to be said for that. So the division of evil. There are physical evils. A girl is pregnant and cannot afford to keep the child. That's a physical evil. A moral evil. A girl wishes to abort the child. An artistic evil. An engineer designs a weak bridge which could collapse. A pen is too thick to write, or a violin has got a missing string. So there are three different modes of evil. You note, there's a certain likeness, but a greater unlikeness. But for some reason, students won't accept that a physical evil. That's an evil. A physical evil, for instance, could be, I should have put more examples in there perhaps, a broken leg, broken arm. Like the children were born with their heads together, joined together. Or the little girl with 4 legs. Now another way of dividing them is based upon the substance, a good man or evil man. That's not the best division there, not the best example rather. Quality. What I'm talking about here is substance is one mode of being. Accidents are what belong to substances. I say that for the new students. Substance, this is a substance, this young woman sitting here. The accidents are her colour, her origin, her Sicilian origin, the aspects of that, the shave, the hair and the statue and all the other things. Her knowledge, they're all things that belong to her. They're not her, they belong to her. They're accidents. So quality is an accident. Good habit or bad habit, for instance. Or quantity, a good number or a bad size, etc. We can divide them according to goodness. Now, some things useful good, other things are pleasurable goods, other things are fitting goods. Worthy or fitting goods are those things which in themselves are good. Little boy, little girl, big boy, big girl, they're good. They're fitting goods. But an unfitting good is an unworthy good, and that's evil. Or a pleasant good Painful, pain is an evil, opposed to pleasant good. Useful good, then the evil is harmful. Anyway, that's not of great importance. The main thing is to understand that there's physical evil, moral evil, and artistic evil. Now, the reason for existence of evil in general, St. Augustine gave us this beautifully. Why does evil exist? I heard spoken from a pulpit here some years ago in this area when a certain well-known man said, "No one knows why evil exists." Oh, I ground my teeth. St. Augustine told us, and he lived about the 4th century. He said, God is so infinitely good and perfect, right up to this point, that he would allow no evil in any of his works, except that some greater good will come of it. That's why he permits evil. Evil exists because of the limitations of things. Wind blows. One of my trees on my property was destroyed, split beautifully. And why does God allow those things? Because a greater good will come of it somewhere. We may not see the goodness. Sometimes it's very difficult to see them in the concrete, what the actual goodness is that arises out of something. Sometimes it's very hard to see. Why a beautiful young woman suffers tremendously with certain illness, we don't know. Why that particular evil may be there, we don't know. Why did Grandma die just at this time when she was most needed by Grandpa? Why? We don't know. But sometimes we do know. I had a little boy once, and he died, and I at the time 11 days, and I didn't know why. I think I know now. It might take many years. We'll tumble to it. We know why sometimes. So there's a good coming out of it. I think if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here today in this country. So there's the reason for existence of evil in general. It exists from some greater good. God would never permit the existence of evil among his works if he were not so omnipotent and good that he could bring good out of evil. That's in the Enchiridion, chapter 11, of St. Augustine. Enchiridion is a kind of instruction booklet. Evil is necessary and a part for the good of the whole. Mildred was a classmate of mine when I was studying pharmacy. In later years, a few years later, we moved. And I just took a while to discover Mildred just lived along the road from me where we moved to. On my visits to Australia, I went in to see Mildred. She was riddled with arthritis. Her body shrunk, and you could just, her sisters, she lived with 3 sisters, said to me, "Would you help Mildred come in?" I just picked her up and took her like a child and put her on a bed. She said to me one day, "I don't know why I exist. I think this was the last visit. What's the good am I?" She said, "I'm useless." "You're useless?" I said, "Millie, when things go wrong," she was a brilliant pharmacist and violinist, incidentally. "And when things go wrong," I said, "I could think of somebody like you and I feel better off." She said, "Me?" I said, "Yes." She said, "You were always my pin-up boy," she said. I didn't know till then. I didn't know it then. No suspicion. I know when I opened my pharmacy, she was there to help me. She brought documents and things and price lists and things that I needed. And I didn't have time to collect them. But what's the good of I? So I talked about St. Augustine's teaching, and better St. Thomas's teaching on this, on evil, the nature of evil. I said, you inspire a lot of people. Look, and I'll tell you what happened when she died. She had about 5 coronary occlusions, and the 6th was a coronary conclusion. And when she did, the 3 sisters broke up when she died. She held the family together. Didn't realise it. Wouldn't have realised it till after she was dead. Too late for her to realise it. So, evil is necessary and a part for the good of the whole. Take the pistons in a car. We've heard of piston rods breaking and going through the cell wall, the
Lock.
Yeah, through the block, yeah. What do you call the... Pardon? Cylinder, yeah, I couldn't think of the word for a second. I was thinking cells, you know. Yeah, it goes through this cylinder wall. But when you see piston rods, they're only about that big, aren't they? They're flattish, usually made. But they're only little things. They could make them out of steel that thick. Yes, but the car would be defective. So they allow the weakness in the part for the good of the whole car. The car wouldn't function if they made it any heavier. They're going to balance the weight of that against the perfection of operation of the car. So things have to be made with limitation of goods in the parts, or we look at as an evil. For instance, they could make cars like one car I had was like, they said it was built like a tank. I just came along after one rolled over one day. They tried to make a corner at 50 miles an hour. Of course, the car kept going and the people kept going with it, rolled over. But it was so built like a tank, they all just got out and walked out of it. It was the same car that I had. They could have made it lighter, but the front end, the drawing, the steering mechanism was not very good in it. And they thought that was a good at the time, but they have to balance one against the other. So the birth of a Mongoloid baby offers opportunities for many persons to make sacrifices. It spurs man onto great deeds, allows many to earn eternal happiness. For example, nurses and physicians and parents, and stimulates better research to understand the human body. St. Thomas has, and I've got the quotation here, he says, in the case of an animal, its goodness would be taken away if every part of it had the dignity of an eye. In the same way, God made the universe to be best as a whole, according to its requirement as a creature, whereas he did not make each creature best, but one better than another. He could have made them all perfect, or seemingly perfect. They could have all been made like humans. But it wouldn't be good for the universe. Even in this life, a gradation of goods is necessary to manifest the perfection of an agent. I remember being in the Rijksdam Museum in Amsterdam. You see great variations in things. And sometimes you see something odd, like in the Louvre in Paris. You see Venus de Milo with beautiful, beautiful structured body, but her arms are cut off here. He did that deliberately. He showed what he can do, the artist that sculptured that body, without the complete body being there. However, artists sometimes have to paint a bad painting or an odd painting to show how good they can be. Because as Aristotle said, an artist that can deliberately make a bad painting is better than an artist who can do nothing but bad paintings or hasn't control over it. Doesn't do it deliberately, but does it because he can't do anything better. So it requires that some have defects in the part. Now, each thing ought to operate in a manner that best befits its manner of being. Many goods would cease to be, if the supreme agent permitted no evil. We'd lose a lot of the goods. And as the late Dr. Di Francesco in Buffalo said when I conducted a symposium on euthanasia here, he said, if we didn't tolerate some evils, we'd have never discovered preparation H. So, in principle, we can know the reasons for evil, but they can be very obscure in the concrete. Now, the subject of evil, since evil is a negative thing, the lack of something, it has to be in something which is positive. It has to be in a being. It has to be in good, some goodness, some good being. It can't be just something negative. So when he's dealing with the principles that prove the existence of God, as St. Thomas says, evil, some think if evil is a thing, there must be an evil God. In other words, a pure evil, a pure nothing. He showed the absurdity of that. Evil is merely the lack of something that ought to be there, but it always rides on the back of something that's good. That's why I said in Ottawa, you might remember, I think I've mentioned this once before, Even Joe Stalin was good, had goodness, because he existed. His very existence is a goodness. But it's so terribly evil because of what he did. I've always said, based upon documentation issued by the American government, that there were 49 million deaths. There were 9 to 12 million kulaks alone, the Western Ukrainian farmers. But 49 million. But Father Krause said it's been now known that there's 100 million people were killed under his direction. Directly killed by his direction. You might remember I told you that a girl jumped up and ran out of the class when I said that. I asked her after what happened. She said, "You said Stalin was good." No, I said his being is good, his operations were terribly evil. Far worse than probably many people have evil carried out. How could he be good? She explained to me what happened is her grandfather had recently hung himself. He was one of the kulaks, and they were all ordered to death. It's estimated 9 to 12 million have been ordered to death by him. And the result was that half of his family, her grandfather's family, were died. They were starved to death. Stalin's lieutenants came to him and said, "They will not collectivize. What do we do?" Stalin just said, "Eliminate them." Just that. So they had the food taken from them. They starved to death. And when the grandfather got them all settled in Canada, the rest of the family, then he hung himself. Poor man must have been in despair. But he's evil, but it's a corrupt evil. According to the principle, corruption of the best is the worst. Man is far worse than any lion or tiger that tears people to pieces. Like that fellow in Australia at a circus. He went to the lion cage and the latch, he didn't quite close it apparently. Next thing, the lions jumped out, and on television we saw a lion with the man's arm, another lion with something else, and the police came in and had to shoot the lot of them. But if a human person did something like that, we'd think it was far worse. Far worse. Like that fellow you remember some years ago. He kept parts of the bodies he had killed, people he killed, in the refrigerator. And he invited neighbours in for soup and that sort of thing.
Dahmer, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Dahmer, yes. You know, it's like the fellow, I told you about that, didn't I? The Black King in Africa, in Evelyn Waugh's book. He invited the fellow to come and have supper with him, and he said, "My wife makes good soup." So, evil is in good as in a subject. Can evil corrupt the whole subject? No, because then it would be nothing. Evil is a lack of something. It ought to be there. If it was a total lack, there'd be nothing existing. People have missed that point. So, my friends, I've given a list of examples in the world of evil in the world. Note that when St. Thomas is dealing with the existence of God, that's in the Summa Theologiae, the Summa of Theology, Book 1, Question 2, Article 3. I've got the reference there. The first objection to proving the existence of God is the existence of evil. I remember two men in Montreal, in Ottawa rather, one was from Montreal. He said, "How can you believe in the existence of God?" He said, "when a little child is born crippled." I said, "First of all, I don't believe in God." And the Lithuanian young woman who brought me there wanted me to meet these men because she'd been debating with them and felt not adequate to dealing with them. She quickly looked at me. She was a Lutheran, but quickly looked at me. "You don't believe in God?" So that's funny for a practicing Catholic. I said, "No, I don't believe in God. I know that he exists with utter certitude. It's not a mere belief." That's the way most Christians are today, including Catholics. It's a mere belief. Your beliefs, my beliefs, their beliefs, etc. I don't have to believe it. I know it with utter certitude. "How can you accept that," said these men, "when a little child is born crippled?" I came close to saying, "And do you ever pay a penny to support that little child or help it in any way?" "Oh no, well, it's not my business, that's the government's business." "No, it's not." So, that's the first objection to the proof of the existence of God. The second one is natural explanations being apparently adequate. We would say scientific explanations. But St. Thomas shows that they are not adequate. Far from it. They cannot even touch the matter. Yet, the humanist society connected with, well, should I say, they're just outside the gates of University of Buffalo. What is it? The Centre of Inquiry. They're all humanists. Well, I happen to be an atheist. Like hell, they're atheists long before they become humanists. So, they were saying, when I attended a debate there, which was just really laughable, I sent a letter to the Western New York Catholic, and they, as a result, to expose what happened there, and they just ignored it. That seems to be what's happening a lot in the world, the Catholic world today. Ignore all these issues. But they brought this objection up: first evil, then scientific explanations. They were the two things that St. Thomas answered. They made no reference whatsoever to St. Thomas. The third one they made was a ludicrous one. The third objection to the existence of God is, why aren't there miracles in the world today? Why don't snakes talk? Why don't asses talk? Sorry, I didn't mean that. You might talk with your ass, my friend, but those people don't. Now, examples of evil, I think we've gone through them.
Jack Waters.
Yes. Speak up.
Dr. Waters, did they deal at all with the question of ex nihilo or ex para?
No, didn't touch it. There was nothing rational.
Could you explain those terms?
From nothing comes nothing. Simply that. From nothing comes something. Nothing. And that is what's so funny. We'll deal with this later. And that's in our course.
The question of evil. Does God contain evil, or is it outside of it?
Does God contain... Oh no, there's no evil in God. No. There's no lack in him. If there were, then he's in potency towards another good, which means he's not pure act. And therefore, he's not God. It means something else needs to compose him with the goods. We'll prove that later, the existence of God. But the...
It's getting colder in here.
Yes, I've noticed that. So, there I've taken from Father Woodbury's magnificent work. His work on ethics was only the beginning, the foundation of ethics. And it's 3 big volumes. Magnificent work that he's done. They said the work of his commentary on the Summa of St. Thomas would reach around the world if he'd finished it. Because he'd written 2 big volumes that was only the beginning, only the first 2 questions. It's enormously, and they're unpublished. One organisation wanted to publish them years ago and asked me to be the general editor. It never happened. He said he had money waiting to be bequested for something, and it broke down. He died. I got the introduction ready, and he said, "Don't be long, my friend. I don't think I've got long to go." That was Tuesday night. Friday, he had a massive cerebral hemorrhage and was dead. Taken to the hospital and died. He told me on, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, "I don't think I've got long to go." He certainly didn't, about 4 days or so. It was a great tragedy. So, Woodbury, in his inimitable style, God, he was a magnificent teacher. When he was in the seminary, he'd leap up on the desk here and say, "Do you follow that so-and-so?" One day, he spluttered a bit. The student took his glasses off and took out a handkerchief and just wiped them. He stopped. "That isn't funny, son." Here's the student of Garrigou-Lagrange. Garrigou-Lagrange was the great man at the beginning of the 20th century. His works are magnificent. On the proofs of the existence of God, his books are the best, and Woodbury has developed them even better. So Woodbury, I took this out of his works and paid homage to him there. It's not my work, it's his work. And there it is laid out for you on page 54 and 55. All the different orders of evil. Of evil, that's right. All the ways things can be evil, and how greater goods come from them. In some things we can see the goodness coming from it. Cancer causes nurses and doctors and others to make great sacrifice to fight against cancer. In all orders, there are people... I can remember even a little thing, like we pharmacists had to take... We decided with the Pharmaceutical Services Guild to have around-the-clock availability to people who needed help. And for a week, each one of us would take responsibility. Didn't have to stay in the pharmacy, but you had to be available to the telephone. And it caused a little sacrifice. But I remember on Sunday morning, I think it was, being told a little baby had diarrhea and was dehydrated, and drugs were needed as quickly as possible. Well, it gives you great joy to make that sacrifice. It was inconvenient to go to the pharmacy, get the drugs ready, whatever it was at the time, and then take it to this little baby who was dehydrated and would possibly die. So that's what it's showing you there. The great evils, Marxism, Freudism, Kantianism, all those great evils, they stimulate philosophers to do better work, think about it, read the stuff, and vomit after you've read some of it. Parmenideanism. We saw that Parmenides, for instance, said there's only being. There are not many beings, there's only just being, that's all, no change. Then came Heraclitus, actually Heraclitus came first, and said there's only change. There's no being, just change. All that's going in front is just a fluid. And Bergson, somewhere at the beginning of the 20th century, said something similar. And Maritain, his own student, Bergson said Maritain understood his philosophy better than anybody. Well, the best book refuting Bergson is written by his student Maritain. And I saw Father Woodbury, and many times I was his driver. He once was driving a car and he'd forgotten, because he was born on a river, you see. He'd forgotten he wasn't on a river. A car and a boat, you turn the steering the road a different way. So he turned the car and he turned the car over. He never drove after that. I used to have to take him place. He'd phone me and say, I have to go somewhere. He tried to get a driver and he couldn't get one. I know you'll do it. That's why I didn't ask you, he said. So I'd take him, and the conversations we had were magnificent. He talked about a marriage case to me once, and it's a humdinger, that case. And, you know, it was a splendidly, he was struggling with it, trying to understand what solution to come to for this marriage case. Anyway, he wrote all the different orders in which there are problems, evils, and I've set them all out for you. Now, next class, we'll deal with a very, very interesting problem, the principle of indirect effect. Dr. Bonnet, who's not well tonight, that's why he's not here, he's obviously going down with the flu. He said this was very neglected, this principle. Very neglected. The principle of double effect. I've got indirect evil here, but it's the principle of double effect is a better name for the principle. And I've set it out with various examples. He said to me, it seems to have been neglected till you woke us up about this principle. Well, even Woodbury didn't deal with it that much. I mean, lots of people didn't, but I've developed it there. So we'll deal with that next class. It's a most fascinating evil. It deals with, I've given you lots of diagrams on that, page 56 onwards. Then when we've finished with that, we'll come to the beautiful, a very beautiful treatise, and we'll deal with that. What is beauty? What are its integral parts? And what are its properties? We'll deal with that. Thank you very much. Thank you for. By the way, I've had a question. Could I have your attention, please? Could I have your attention, please? Attention, please. I've got a question here, and it's something I meant to put in here about Satan. Satan is the most magnificent, most beautiful thing that God ever made. And corruption of that magnificent thing is the worst. Corruption of the best is the worst. That's why he's called Lucifer. Lucy comes from lux in Latin, means light, the bearer of light. The most brilliant. But because of all that, he's the most dangerous. Those
Is
kids...
he one of the seven?
Pardon?
Is he one of the seven angels?
I think he was one of the top. He was the top angel. He was the Lucifer, the bearer of light.
Yeah, he was like number one, according to church teaching.
Number one, yeah. It was the greatest thing that God ever made. That's why, if he can make a mistake, God help the rest of us. You know what Woodbury said one night? It'd be better if we were born dogs. We'd never take the risks that we have to take in life with eternal happiness, because the loss of that is infinitely evil. For eternity, the suffering. The greatest suffering is the loss of what we could have had. The loss of that perfect good. Anyway, we'll tell you more about that. Did I answer the question sufficiently, do you think? Good.
There is one.